Okay, so yeah, it's been a while. And I am failing at the spookiness here on the channel, but I do have an excuse because if you remember, I have that project where I am turning the Newsies characters into point and click characters. And there was one in particular where over a year I've been working on this and I finally finished her. I was like it was like things were starting to come together and I was not stopping. And I have her here, and so Meta and in her rally outfit. The other one, her intro outfit where she's first seen in the movie, the purple outfit, that one came together pretty easy. But so that is in the shop. I have the Meta set, there's Spot Conlon set, and then there's Jack and Sarah set. So those of you that are Newsies fans, yeah, you can find that. I'm trying to get other uh sets going. I think soon I'll have a Les Jacobs set and but yeah. Her rally outfit was just it didn't want to come together, but it finally did, and I wasn't stopping. But anyway, that's not what this is about. No. Um, I did that Kavik the Wolf Dog book review, and then it was like, no more book review. Well, I have one, and it fits the spooky season. So I'm excited about this one because it's so unusual for Jules Verne. Now, I'm a big fan of Jules Verne. And I think the last time I was thrown off guard by his writing was a story titled Village in the Treetops. I was so disappointed in that one. I bought the book, and after I read it, I was like, and every once in a while I'm sorry that I got rid of the book. And then other times I'm just like, no. After that, after feeling so deflated after reading it, why would I keep it? And when I looked it up, he wrote it later in his later years. So, and but this one I bought before the pandemic and I read it during the pandemic. Well, then I read it again to refresh my memory and everything, and it's titled Carpathian Castle. Now, when it was released in here in the US, it had several titles. The Castle of the Carpathians, The Castle in Transylvania, um, Rodolphe de Gortz, and I'm sorry if I say that incorrectly. There's also Castle of the Carpathian, which I already said that. So this was released in 1892, and the castle that possibly inspired Jules Verne, or I guess it actually has been confirmed that it did inspire Jules Verne at this point. You can correct me, of course, does exist. It's called the Colt Fortress, and you can actually go there. Um, I will put information in the description box. I think that would be really cool. And I love doing stuff like that. You know, going to places that are inspiration for, stuff like that, or going to places where you see the picture. The people that put the picture up of old places and yeah, and this once stood here. Yeah, stuff like that. And I love doing stuff like that. Anyway, so the Colt Fortress is I'm not going to even try to say because I know I'll butcher it, but it's in this particular county in Transylvania. And it looks like a lot of fun to go and visit. And hopefully someday I will. And but here's the other thing. Okay, again, this was released in 1892. In 1897, for hardcore horror fans, of course, you know that Dracula was released by Bram Stoker in 1897. Okay, so there are those who think that this story inspired Bram Stoker. Now, I know the story up, down, all around of Dracula, as do a lot of other people. And when I read this, there's inspiration. Okay, I want to make it very clear that there's a difference between being inspired and just ripping off, or in other words, pulling a Thomas Edison. Okay, because we all know what Thomas Edison is known for. Okay, so, and I want to make it very clear also that after reading this, Bram Stoker was inspired. Okay. He did not pull a Thomas Edison by any means. Yes, there is a castle. Yes, there is a visitor, but that's yes, there's a lot of superstition surrounding, yeah, and it's in a village. There's a castle. There's a visitor that shows up, and there's superstition heavily, yeah, people are are superstitious. That's what I'm trying to say. But that's pretty much it. That's that's pretty much where it ends. That could be any story. I mean, there are a lot of other stories that have the same thing. And in fact, let's look at this story. Now, one thing to with mine, it's just the paperback. It didn't have the illustration. I love Jules Verne's illustrations. I absolutely, and I think it's just the etching illustrations that they had, like the sketches, I think I should say, the sketches that they had in the 1800s. I love them. But something about Jules Verne's were just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And maybe it's because I'm into and I just love his stories in general. But there's a collection, or yeah, I guess you would call it a collection. It's called the Seawolf Press uh Illustrated Classics. It's over on Amazon, and I have like three books. And so with these classics, they have the original. So now I have the original of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And um they're a good quality book. And the last time I looked, they keep adding more and more books all the time. And some of them I'm not so sure if they're classics, because they had that Titanic, the accounts of the actual survivors from 1912. I wouldn't consider that a classic, but but it's good that it's there. I mean, to have that, I mean, why not? And yeah, every once in a while you see some of those and it's like, I wouldn't, I don't know that that's a classic, but okay. I would love to have the Phantom of the Opera. I need to put that back in my collection. I don't know what happened to my copy. It may have got stolen for all I know. But anyway, the Seawolf Press, classic illustrations. Now, this one does have illustrations. That's where I was going with it. This one has illustrations, but my copy does not come with the illustrations, but I did find some illustrations, and I'll of course show them up here. So this of course takes place in a village known as worst or versed. I'm not sure which. And in the Carpathian Mountains, you can correct me. I don't mind at all. Um, in the Carpathian Mountains of Transylvania, at the time that this was written, because it's saying in parentheses, in the then Austria-Hungary. Now, there was a war going on, because I get this a lot on my Max Fleischer video, where people want to fight with me about what I said about where he was, about, I think it was Krakow or something about his papers or whatever. People always want to fight with me about this. There was a war going on. I do want to fix that video, by the way. I really do. But you have to understand that there were wars going on in the 1800s. It's not like the Napoleonic Wars ended and then everybody was fine. No, there were still wars going on all over the world. Okay. It's not like it was just the Napoleonic Wars and the American Civil War and that was it. No, you need to, I mean, there was one person that fought with me and they tried to say that where Max Fleischer was born, I think it was Krakow, something like that. I know I'm not saying it correctly, but it moved after the war. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? No, the village doesn't move or the city doesn't move. Borders do. Okay, after the war, borders will move. They will move the borders around and everything. That's that's why it's so funny to me that in like in archaeology and everything, and they will find like Roman frescoes or Roman tiling and everything in Turkey, and people are shocked. They're like, why why were the Romans there? It's like the Romans were in Scotland for gosh sakes. They were settling in there and the Romans and the Scots hated each other. They, they couldn't stand each other. Oh, it's war. But yeah, so there was a war, the Austria-Hungarian War, and the borders changed. At the time that this book was released, there was that war going on to free and all that. So that's where I was going with it. So here's the thing, is in the story, you are introduced to this old shepherd, and his name is Frick. Not kidding you. It's just, that is his name. It's Frick. And he's one of those kinds of people that he's an older fella and he talks about how his eyes are sharp, he's still a strapping young man. Yeah, but he's an older guy. Okay, well, this merchant comes up. Now, this is one of those merchants where they had everything on his think of Hustler Kid from Recess. They would open it. I love Recess. That's one of my favorites. And but there used to be merchants that did that, where they would have everything hanging from their jacket. They were known as walking merchants, and they would have their merchandise hanging from their jackets. And so he comes up, and they all of a and he shows Frick this telescope, and he's using the telescope and he's just in awe of this telescope. And then all of a sudden he turns it to this old castle and he sees smoke coming from it. Well, that's not supposed to happen. This is for like the first 4 or 5 chapters, it drags because okay, I'm used to Jules Verne having to explain everything. He wants to explain the backstories. He wants to tell you all about, he wants to explain the village. He wants to explain, which is good. As a writer, you want, because the reader isn't going to know otherwise. That was one thing that I couldn't get my ex to understand. And because my ex was helping me edit, And he wanted me to cut out all of that stuff. And I'm like, and he actually said at one point, do you think your readers are stupid? Just tell the story. And I'm like, I can't fucking tell the story if you want me to cut all this out. I just, that's like telling Tolkien to get rid of the important part where he's explaining why the ring is evil. If you take that out, if you take that big chunk out, then the reader is wondering why everybody is afraid of this piece of jewelry. It just doesn't make any sense. You gotta keep the meat and potatoes in there, right? I couldn't get him to understand that, and it was really irritating. So and I grew up on writers like this. I mean, like Edgar Rice Burroughs has a science fiction story. I mean, a science fiction series, which I don't know why everybody fixates on Tarzan. I like Tarzan, but his science fiction series is actually a lot more fun. But he takes like the first chapter and sometimes even the second chapter as well to explain the universe that he has created. And then he moves on to getting into the actual story. And so, yeah, you got to know all of this stuff before, if you, because look, the Force doesn't exist. I know, crazy. This is coming from a Star Wars fan, but the readers aren't going to know this stuff unless you tell them. And it really irritated me when my ex was just like, I know he was trying to help, but that pissed me off when he was like, do you think your readers are stupid? I have never thought that, but I have to explain things. Okay, I'm severely dyslexic, and all I wanted him to do was help me edit, not edit out everything. And then, yeah, go tell Tolkien to take out the most important part of the story. Tell Jules Verne to take out the part where people are scared of the sea monster. That it wouldn't make sense. So, so I'm used to that. With Jules Verne, I'm used to him telling the backstory and explaining all of this stuff. However, littered among all this, everybody was so intrigued with this telescope. I don't know why he had to keep explaining this telescope. That part bothered me. It got annoying after a while because it was like Frick had never seen a telescope. Okay, fine. Okay, because that would, all right. And because he's so used to his eyes seeing all right. Then he went to his boss. Boss had never seen a telescope before, and they're like, if you've ever seen, I will use all the references. If you've ever seen Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and it's that part where Azim uses the lens inside that leather uh surround and gives it to Robin, and Robin is using the sword. He's like holding it up and going like this. I mean, he's just mesmerized. It was the same thing. It was like two chapters of these people just staring at this telescope. I'm like, just move on, Jules. I mean, I got a story to. Yeah, it did for me. It got annoying. I mean, I want to make that clear. It got annoying for me. You may enjoy it. I want to make that clear. So we get past that. Now he has explained how, like the backstory, such as that Frick's boss has a daughter who is engaged. And it's supposed to be this important union within the village. All right. And her fiance is a little arrogant, has has a chip on his shoulder. Okay. And and he does. Because because they decided to have, once the villagers have realized that there is smoke coming from this castle that has been abandoned for so long, they decide to have a meeting. Okay. And it's like the it's like superstition meets conspiracy theory. This whole scene is so hilarious to me because it shows I don't know if I had to step back and laugh about this because it's like you also have to consider that this is also when Sherlock Holmes was being released by Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, Arthur Conan Doyle was very, very superstitious. He was a spiritualist and everything. And you have to consider that like in the 1910s, so several years later, he was tricked by those girls, those two little girls with this fairy meeting place. It was like he so badly wanted to believe that that was a thing and so I almost want to believe that Jules Verne was just for one attacking or not attacking, poking fun at the concept of superstition, but also he knew that his fellow author was heavily superstitious and into all this stuff. And so that's why this scene is here. Now, I have nothing against people who are superstitious or have, because I figured there are times where I have my own superstition and don't even know it. You know, I have no doubt of that. And I this whole scene was so funny to me. It just it, because these people were so bent out of shape. Now, the castle itself belongs to this baron, Rodolphe de Gortz, and I'm sorry again if I say the name incorrectly. Now, um, so this baron, nobody has seen this baron for years. And so, but it's like nobody thought nobody wants to go to the house, nobody wants to go to the castle and investigate because they're so scared. They have decided because of all the chatter that they have decided their superstition is off the charts, their conspiracy theories are off the charts. They have decided that the devil himself has taken over that place. It's just it's just like really? Really? And I enjoyed that scene. I really because this is proof that people do not change. They really do not change. And I love it. I love it. Well, during all of this, during this, there's a certain visitor named Count Franz de Telek, or just Franz. He is listening to all of this, you know, all these people who are talking about the history of the castle and the owner of the castle, this baron, and all this stuff. And so he's listening and he's because nobody wants to go there. There's superstition and these theories that they just ramble on about and everything. All of this is keeping them from going. So he says, you know what? I'll go. I will go and I will investigate and figure out what the hell is going on in this castle. And so he goes there. He knocks on the door, and it turns out that it's the Baron. But plot twist, the Count and the Baron were once rivals. for the affection of a young lady. So I'm not going to give away too much of the story, but it just keeps it just keeps going from there. And I mean it it has its hilarious moments. For me anyway, just like I said, that one, the meeting scene was just it the telescope whole thing. I don't know. Looking at it now, I have a feeling that Jules Verne was just trying to point out that here's a village that has not seen this particular technology before, and that's why it took so long. I would believe that. And but it did feel like it did get annoying for me, and it just. But and again, when it comes to the difference between Inspire and then pulling a Thomas Edison, Bram Stoker, not by a long shot, did he pull a Thomas Edison. He was inspired. Oh yeah, like I said, there was a castle, there was a visitor, superstition ran wild, but that's about it. I mean, and now there was a movie made. Um, Now it says here it was in 1981. It says Czechoslovakian, yeah, Czechoslovakia comedy feature. Of course, now there's the Czech Republic and Slovakia. So, um, but at the time, it was Czechoslovak. Comedy feature film, The Mysterious Castle in the Carpathians, and it's based off of this novel. I will put information in the description box for you. And but anyway, that is the Carpathian Castle. It was released in um 1892, and of course then in 1897. They say that it's possible that it was inspired by Bram Stoker, but I personally think that he was inspired. I mean, final note here, you know, a lot of those authors were friends. I mean, Jules Verne and H.G. Wells were friends, and so I have no doubt that Bram Stoker was very much inspired. I mean, there are elements that are there, but as for ripping off, no, that didn't happen. Yeah, you got to figure that a lot of those, I mean, like Nathaniel Hawthorne and Herman Melville, they were friends. So, yeah, I mean, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. And again, I will have all that information in the description box for you. And sorry it took so long to do another book review. So